guys, we really miss you and wish that you were here in person, but glad you joined us tonight. I just want to give a shout out to my high school girls. I hope y'all are doing good. Miss Stacy and Miss Courtney and I miss you very much. I hope y'all are doing well. Big congratulations to Stacy on the birth of baby Evie this week. She's beautiful. Y'all go check out her picture and send a congratulations to Stacy and Chad. If y'all ready to play a game, here we go. All right. For 400, what's that say?
Which one? This one?
Yeah, we'll go to that. Video games, 400. The Nook family is always there to help you in this game.
All right, y'all. So this is a game series that has a family with the last name Nook. Some of y'all might know who this is. Let's see if we can get a good answer for that one. Miss Amber, do you know who that is? She's like, nope. She's not a video game person at all. I know who it is. Give you a clue, they just came out with a new video game. So we'll wait and see if anybody. Oh, boom. All right, so Miss Reagan come in with Animal Crossing, and let's see, that is correct. Yeah. That was 400. All right, Miss Amber.
Let's do Disney for 400.
Disney for 400.
Name the place where Flynn brings Rapunzel to entangle.
All right, so do you know this one?
You would think I would, but I don't.
This is actually a harder one. It might have been harder than the $500 question in Disney, but I was like, that's a. Nathan Jackson said the pub. Even if that's right, I ain't gonna give him credit.
That's where he took her. He said they were fighting in the pub and throwing. You remember that, right?
Anybody else got a good guess on that one besides Nathan?
Okay.
He did give you a clue. That is where they were at. Oh, there we go. All right, so Reagan says the Ugly Duckling. I'm not sure if that's right.
That was the pub.
Matthew said the lake. All right, so let's see. The Snuggly Duckling. Oh, that was so close.
But I was right. It was a pub.
All right, so let's pick a different one.
All right, sports for 100.
Sports for 100.
My diameter is 18 inches, and I love being dunked. Easy one.
Anybody? Come on. I know that one. I'm not a huge sports person. Nathan Jackson said a basketball. I don't know what that is. Wrong answer. Nathan. Reagan said so close. I don't know if that was for her comment or for yours, but it'll fit either one. Anybody else got a question? Matthew. Joey got it. Oh, Joey, man, on my screen, Joey barely beat Reagan and Twerdy out. Matt. So, all right, let's see what we got. Oh, I got to click the right button. Basketball is correct. Yay! Joey got that one.
100.
100. All right, so how many was that? 3? Let's do 2 more.
Forsyth Eats, 200.
Forsyth Eats. Where's that? Right here. Boom.
Whether you are in the ocean or thrown up on the beach, this will taste good sitting in your belly for up to 3 days.
All right, y'all. So just to give you a hint, it kind of like has a Bible reference mixed in with that. Look at the word throne and the word belly, and that might help you. 3 days might help you too. Nathan said Captain D's. I don't know, but
it's a creative one. That'd be good.
I think Nathan had come up with that one, didn't he? Yeah. So it was. I didn't get this one right. I struggled with it. But then when I seen the answer, it was 2020. Reagan said Captain D's. Nope. We'll All right, so here we go. We got one coming in from Matthew.
Yes.
Matthew said Jonas. I think that's right, isn't it?
No, he said Jonah.
Jonah is.
Jolie got it right.
Joey said Jonas Pizza. All right, let's see. Oh, look, she copied off my paper.
I think it was
200. All right, one more.
Currently, Reagan has
Monroe
400
County
points and Jolie has
locations.
300.
Monroe County locations for 400. This one's worth 400.
Okay.
All right, y'all ready?
Help! My fear of heights calls me to stumble at this location.
All right, so this is something in Monroe County, and apparently has something to do with heights and stumble. That kind of helps you out. It is a location. My fear of heights calls me to stumble at this location. That's interesting. So think of somewhere in Monroe County that would be elevated that you could stumble. Okay. Nathan Jackson said the Forsyth's water tower.
The small letter.
I'm about to punch him because he's right across the room from me. That's all I'm saying. All right, so Gracie Jackson came in with High Falls. Matthew did too. Let's see if that's right. Oh, look at that.
Good job,
Yay.
Gracie.
Yay, Gracie. All right, so that concludes our game for tonight.
Reagan has 400, Gracie has 400, and Jolie has 300.
Oh, wow.
It's a tie race.
Okay, so we'll figure out how to break that tie later. Who was it, Gracie and who?
Gracie and Reagan both
Reagan.
have 400, and Jolie has 300.
Okay, we might carry that one over. All right, so I'm fixing to flip y'all back over to the lovely Miss Amber. And
All right. So I hate that I have to follow up Matt and Christina from last week because they had a really awesome newscast presentation that was really cool, and mine is just going to be a little boring. So here we go. We're talking about dinosaurs on the ark tonight, and pretty much dinosaurs in general, and then focus in on dinosaurs on the ark. So every time you hear the topic of dinosaurs, it usually starts with millions of years ago. And we already know that based on what we talked about, the age of the earth, that can't be true because according to the Bible and the genealogies, the earth is only about 6,000 years old. So what is the truth about dinosaurs? Ken Ham, who, if any of you know about the Ark Encounter or Creation Museum, Answers in Genesis, really awesome website if you ever have any questions about what you're learning in school and you feel like it contradicts with the Bible, go to Answers in Genesis and just type in that topic. But he's the one that is behind all of that. He says that dinosaurs are used more than any other animal to persuade people to believe in millions of years in evolution. So we as Christians, it's important for us to know, what does the Bible say about dinosaurs? Where do dinosaurs fit in with all of this so that we can defend our faith and give an answer when anyone asks us why we have hope for what we believe in. So let's start with our starting assumptions. When you talk about evolutionary science, they have starting assumptions. But first, let's start with evolution. Evolution is not a fact, it is a theory. It has not been proven. And I know that when I was in school, they would slip that in there. It's a theory, but by the way, it's fact. And they would teach it as fact. And so we just need to upfront say it's a theory. It's never been proven, and it is not true. So, but these scientists have assumptions that they built this theory upon. And the basis of their theory is how they interpret fossils and their own assumptions. Okay, so evolutionary scientists assume that sedimentary rock layers around the world were deposited over billions of years. That is one of their starting assumptions. They assume that. They also assume that the fossils found in the lower layers of the rock are millions of years older than the fossils found in the upper layers. So we as Christians should have different starting assumptions. our basis of when we talk about anything to do with science, our starting assumption and our belief is in a creator. We know that there is a creator. That's our first assumption. And then our second is our creator has a written word, and his word is true. It is inerrant from beginning to end. And his word gives an accurate account of history from the beginning of creation. So as Christians, that is what your foundation should be on. Your assumption should be, I believe in God as creator, I believe in his word, and then let's move out from there. Okay? So let's start with that tonight. What does the Bible have to say about dinosaurs? A few weeks ago, we talked about that there are 6 literal days of creation, 6 literal 24-hour days. So some evolutionary, believe it or not, there are some Christians who believe in evolution, and they say that a day is a really long amount of time. Well, the truth is that every time that the Bible refers to day, it is a literal 24-hour day. So we know that to be true. We talked about that a few weeks ago. So on day 5 of creation is when God made all of the animals in the sea and all of the animals that fly. Let's read out of Genesis chapter 1, verse 20. And it says, "Then God said, let the waters abound with an abundance of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the face of the firmament of the heavens." So this is, on day 5, is when God would have made dinosaurs that swim in the ocean and dinosaurs that have the ability to fly. We know that to be true because he said he made the waters abound with living creatures. And so on day 6, it says in Genesis 1, verse 24, "Then God said, let the earth bring forth the living creature according to its kind, cattle and creeping thing and beast of the earth, each according to its kind, and it was so." So on day 6 is when God would have made the dinosaurs that lived on the land. What else did God make on day 6? He made man on day 6. So did dinosaurs live at the same time as man? Yes. The answer is yes, they did. And evolutionary science, they believe that man has only been around for the past 100,000 years. That's just not true. They believe that dinosaurs lived 75 plus million years ago, and that men never lived at the same time as dinosaurs. Well, we know, according to God's word, that both man and land animals were made on day 6, and then that the dinosaurs that lived in the ocean and that had the ability to fly were made on day 5. So, but is the actual word dinosaur mentioned in the Bible? What do you guys think? I was talking with Pastor James right before we started, and he already knew this, that the word dinosaur actually wasn't coined until the year 1841, and it means terrible lizard. So when you look into the Bible, you won't see the word dinosaur. But in Job, God is talking to Job, and he's reminding him of what a great creator he is. And he reminds him of that in the way that he describes this massive creature that he made called the behemoth. And Pastor James, are you showing the picture of the brachiosaurus? Okay. So while I read this part in Job, I want y'all to check out this brachiosaurus. And I'm going to read Job chapter 40, verses 15 through 19. This is God speaking to Job, and he's describing this massive creature. Okay? In verse 15, he says, "Look now at the behemoth, which I made along with you." I made along with you. Do you hear that? Day 6. "He eats grass like an ox. See now, his strength is in his hips, and his power is in his stomach muscles. He moves his tail like a cedar. The sinews of his thighs are tightly knit. His bones are like beams of bronze, his ribs like bars of iron. He is the first of the ways of God. Only he who made him can bring near his sword." So this is God speaking and describing this massive creature called a behemoth. And some people have suggested that maybe it was an elephant or a hippo. Well, in verse 17, it says he moves his tail like a cedar. Well, we know that elephants and hippos have little tiny sissy tails, whereas this Brachiosaurus has a tail like a cedar. So God is describing what is very likely a dinosaur here, and he refers to it as a behemoth. So it might not be the word dinosaur, but he is describing this massive creature that lines up with our fossil records of dinosaurs. In the very next chapter, Job 41, God also, he's still speaking to Job, and he starts describing this huge animal that lives in the sea called a leviathan. And I really suggest you guys go and read Job 41 on your own this week. I'm not going to read this whole chapter to you guys, but I really think you would find it to be interesting. But he describes this massive sea creature called a leviathan. And the leviathan is also mentioned in Job 3:8, Psalm 74:14, Psalm 104, verse 26, Isaiah 27, verse 1. But it very likely was a massive sea-going dinosaur. So y'all go and check that out this week. Really neat to read about. So are dinosaurs in the Bible? Yeah, they're in the Bible. It's not the word dinosaur, but they're in the Bible. So one of the questions, like Ken Ham said, the quote at the beginning, he said that dinosaurs are used more than any other animal to convince people to believe in evolution in millions of years. And one of the questions that people come to you with is, well, how in the world could dinosaurs have fit in the ark? There's no way that 2 of every dinosaur could have fit on the ark. Let's turn to Genesis chapter 7, verse 14. And it says, they and every beast after its kind, all cattle after their kind, every creeping thing that creeps on the earth after its kind, and every bird after its kind, every bird of every sort. And they went into the ark to Noah, 2 by 2 of all flesh, in which is the breath of life. So those that entered, male and female of all flesh, went in as God had commanded him, and the Lord shut him in. Okay, it didn't say 2 of every species, it said 2 of every kind. And I know you guys have probably learned about the levels of classification. So kind lines up with family. And there's only about 50 different kinds of dinosaurs, which means that Noah really only needed about 100 dinosaurs on the ark. So when people ask you, well, how could the dinosaurs have fit on the ark? Well, A, there only needed to be about 100 dinosaurs on the ark. B, although when we think of dinosaurs, we often think of like the big, huge T-Rex or the Brachiosaurus that we showed, and I'm probably not pronouncing that right, but not all dinosaurs were those big, large monsters. In fact, the average size of a dinosaur was about the size of a bison. So, A, there only needed to be about 100 of them on the ark. B, the average size of dinosaurs was about the size of a bison. And C, for the large dinosaurs, God probably wouldn't have sent the full-grown adult dinosaurs to the ark for these big, huge T-Rexes. He probably would have sent like the babies or the juvenile-sized dinosaurs, so that because he knew that they would take up less space, they would need less food. And finally, the ark was huge. Okay, I know that for most of us, when we first read about Noah's Ark as a kid, we probably read like the storybook version, and we see these really cute pictures of this little cute little dinky ark with all the animals sticking their heads out. And storybooks are great. It's great for kids to be able to learn these stories, and I use them with my girls. But as you get older, we have to realize that those illustrations can be a little deceptive, because if we think that that's what the ark looked like, then when people come to us with questions of, there's no way that 2 of every animal could have fit on the ark, well, how are you supposed to come back with, oh yeah, they could, their heads were all sticking out? No, the actual ark was much bigger. And my family and I actually had the opportunity to go to the Ark Encounter about 3 years ago. And getting to see that up close and getting to go inside, it was so cool. And I highly recommend if any of you ever have the chance to go to the Ark Encounter. And I know some of you did, those of you that went on the Kentucky mission trip before. take the opportunity and go to that Ark encounter, because seeing how huge the Ark was, and when you go inside, there's 3 levels, and they have it set up very likely how Noah would have had it set up, and you see where all the dinosaurs would have been and where all the food would have been. It's just really cool. God gave Noah very specific details for how to build this ark, and it was large enough to fit all of these animals on. So we covered like what the Bible says about dinosaurs. That they really are in the Bible, that they were real animals. They lived at the same time as man. It wasn't millions of years ago. The next thing I want to move on to is that true science will always support the Bible. And what I mean by true science is you've learned about the scientific method. You look around and you observe what's going on around you. You form hypothesis, you have tests, and then you have these conclusions. You share your conclusions. Well, if you look around at the world and what is going on in nature, it's always going to support what the Bible says. So, for instance, let's look at the flood that Matt and Christina covered last week. We know that the flood was global. We know that the flood explains how rock layers could have formed very quickly, not over billions of years, like evolutionary scientists will tell you. We also know that the flood explains what happened to most of the dinosaurs. Most of the dinosaurs were killed in the flood. We know that some of them went onto the ark, about 100 of them, and after the flood they would have repopulated, and eventually, probably through human influence, they died out because they were a threat to mankind, and they would have killed the dinosaurs, or as civilizations grew, they would have had less places to live. Their environment would have been closed in on. But so just like other animals, they became extinct. But we also can look at the flood and see that the fossil evidence created during the flood supports the biblical account. Let's look at Genesis chapter 7, verse 11. And it says, "In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, the 17th day of the month, on that day all the fountains of the great deep were broken up, and the windows of heaven were opened." All right, so think about, it says the fountains of the great deep were broken up. So water would have gushed up from under the earth. And it says the windows of heaven were opened. There's a lot of biblical scholars who believe that our earth used to have a layer of water around it as part of our atmosphere. And when the flood happened, this layer of water would have just gushed down on the earth. And so it was the water came very quickly. And if you look at the fossil records, it shows that. It shows that the water came very quickly. I'm going to read really quickly to you guys some examples of fossils that support that this water came really quickly, and these dinosaurs were buried very rapidly. It says, one family of 6 fossilized dinosaurs, 1 adult, 2 smaller adults, 2 juveniles, and a baby, were found buried together with no evidence of their having been attacked or scavenged by other animals. Secular paleontologists theorized that this group of dinosaurs, therefore, may have perished in a flood. Well, duh, we know that. Time and again, paleontologists speak of dinosaur fossil finds having been formed on the floor of an ancient lake or sea, or in an old riverbed. When 7 fossilized dinosaurs, all identified as being of one species, were found in a single deposit in Patagonia, they showed no sign of disease, so the animals were apparently victims of some catastrophic event. It must indeed have been quite some catastrophic event to have suddenly buried a group of such large, up to 40 feet long dinosaurs. And evidence of rapid burial is often unmistakable. For example, from Oxfordshire, UK, Sauropod, which is the family of dinosaurs that the Brachiosaurus that we showed earlier is in, footprints, which would require rapid burial for preservation. From China's Jiangxi province, an oviraptor dinosaur fossil with 2 eggs still visible in the body cavity. which means it died just before it was about to lay its eggs. So you have this dinosaur that is about to lay its eggs, and all of a sudden, this flood comes and it's buried very quickly. And so these fossils were preserved really well because of how quickly this flood came, and the evidence shows that. Looking at the dinosaur bones is further evidence that contradicts the millions of years theory. So there was this one paleontologist named Dr. Schweitzer, I believe is her name, and when you find fossils, one of the big no-nos is you don't cut through the fossil. You do everything you can to not cut through the fossil, but this particular fossil that she found was in the wall of this huge cliff, and so they had to cut into it to get it out. And when they cut into it, she found that there were actually soft tissue cells in there. Well, how in the world could you have soft tissue cells in a fossil that was 75 million years old, supposedly? You can't. It's impossible. And since that time, dinosaur bones with blood cells, hemoglobin, fragile proteins, soft tissue such as flexible ligaments and blood vessels, DNA, and radiocarbon have all been found. And so this would be impossible unless, of course, dinosaurs have not been extinct for millions of years, and their remains were preserved really quickly under catastrophic conditions a few thousand years ago. So when I was researching this, I typed into Google just to see what Google would say. And the very first article that popped up was, scientists find soft tissue in 75 million year old dinosaur. So instead of looking at the evidence that was found, that there were soft tissue cells and DNA in these bones, and saying, ooh, maybe we need to reconsider whether or not these dinosaur fossils are millions of years old, they are so adamant that these dinosaurs had to have lived millions of years ago that they ignore the evidence that proves otherwise. Why don't you read about these findings in your secular science textbooks? I know I never read about them finding DNA and blood vessels and soft tissue in dinosaur fossils. So when Dr. Schweitzer went to go publish her findings, so we talked about the scientific method earlier, and when you have new findings, you go and publish it, and there's these scientific journals, and you have to publish your findings there, and that's where different scientists read each other's findings. So she went to publish what she found, and she ran into some problems. So entrenched is the evolutionary paradigm in the scientific community that it soon became known to Dr. Schweitzer that Dr. Schweitzer was having trouble getting her results published. No one would publish her findings. I had one reviewer tell me that he didn't care what the data said. He knew that what I was finding wasn't possible, said Schweitzer. I wrote back and said, well, what data would convince you? And he said none. So there are evolutionary scientists out there that are so entrenched in this belief that there cannot be a creator. There's no way that the earth is young, that they will ignore the evidence that proves otherwise just so that they can continue to promote what they assume and what they believe. So also, there's different archaeological finds around the world that kind of go along with what we've been talking about, that dinosaurs did live at the same time as man. There's this one example of Bell's behemoth, and it is found on the tomb of Bishop Richard Bell. He died in the year 1496, and his tomb is in Carlisle Cathedral in Britain. But it has this engraving on it of what any child could recognize as dinosaurs on it, and it looks very similar to the Brachiosaurus that we looked at earlier. So let me just read this to you guys really quickly. And brass engravings dating from the 1400s at Carlisle Cathedral in Britain depict creatures that any 21st century child would instantly recognize as dinosaurs, along with depictions of various fish, a dog, a pig, a bird, and other familiar animals. How could the person engraving those depictions have known what dinosaurs looked like, given that he or she lived over 3 centuries before the fossil bones of such creatures were systematically dug up, described, and named? Surely the answer is clear. People knew what such dinosaurs looked like because those creatures were alive at that time and were as familiar to people as fish, dogs, pigs, and birds. And this isn't the only example of engravings of dinosaurs found. There's paintings and caves and all other different things from all over the world. There's even, when we were at the Creation Museum, my nerdy husband bought this book right here, and I was like, why are you buying a book about dragons? But when I started looking into it, it just talks about how there's dragon legends from all over the world of these animals that when you actually look at them, the way that they look lines up exactly with our fossil records of dinosaurs. So you have these stories of dinosaurs from all over the world. From Europe across Asia and into China, historical references to dragons abound, with the described features of those creatures often matching scientists' modern reconstructions of dinosaurs from fossil evidence. So why is it important to know about dinosaurs? I know some of you might be interested in dinosaurs to begin with, but some of you probably aren't. So why is it important to know this information? Knowing the truth about dinosaurs can be a great tool for witnessing to a culture bombarded with evolutionary teaching. Like Ken Ham said, this is a stumbling block for evolution. They base all of their findings on assumptions, and these assumptions are not true. And so if you can point out those faults to your friend who has been taught evolution their whole life and just get them to think for themselves, it can be a way for you to introduce Christ to them and to tell them about the truth from the Bible. There is no need for the church to be silent regarding dinosaurs, nor is there any excuse given the increasingly abundant creationist resource materials, such as this book that I've been using tonight, the Creation Answers book, which can equip Christians to boldly proclaim Christ, no matter how evolutionized the culture. And if more and more Christians, thus equipped and emboldened, are ready to do just that, what a difference that could make. And I truly believe that. You guys, if you educate yourselves and just study your apologetics so that when people come to you and want to challenge you about your faith, especially those of you that are about to go off to college soon, if you have a good foundation of your faith and you can explain to them, this is what I believe and this is why, you have great opportunities to evangelize to your friends and those around you. We're going to look at a quick video, and this is Ken Ham that I was telling you about, the Answers in Genesis guy, the guy who is behind the Ark Encounter in the Creation Museum, and he's just going to wrap things up for us. So y'all watch this video real quick.
What really happened to the dinosaurs?
Many people are perplexed by the topic of dinosaurs. Where did they come from? When did they live? What happened to them? You see, when you dig up a dinosaur skeleton, it doesn't come with a label attached saying, "Hi, I'm 65 million years old and this is what happened to me." We have to interpret that skeleton in relation to the past. So where did dinosaurs come from? What happened to them? When did they live? I want to show you that when you take God at His word in the book of Genesis, that we can explain dinosaurs, and observational science actually confirms that explanation based upon the Bible. See, the Bible tells us that God made the land animals on day 6 of creation. And who else was created on day 6? Well, Adam and Eve. And how long ago was that? Well, when you add up all the dates in the Bible, about 6,000 years. So taking God at His word in Genesis, dinosaurs lived beside people about 6,000 years ago. And they were vegetarian to start with. Genesis chapter 1 verse 29 tells us that all the animals were vegetarian. But then Adam sinned, and because of sin, everything changed. The whole of creation now groans because of sin. In fact, after the event of Noah's flood, God told Noah that now humans could eat meat, could eat animal flesh. But before that time, they were instructed only to be vegetarian. So sometime after sin, obviously animals started changing their diets as well. then the Bible tells us that there was a global flood and two of every kind of land-dwelling, air-breathing animal went on board the boat that Noah built, Noah's Ark. Now, people often say, wait a minute, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dinosaur kinds. No, there might be hundreds of dinosaur names, and many of those names are given to different variations within a dinosaur kind. But when you actually work through it, there's probably less than 50 dinosaur kinds. The T-Rex type kind, the raptor type kind, the sauropod type kind, and so it goes on. And the other thing to remember is that the average size of a dinosaur is only the size of a sheep or a German shepherd dog or a small pony or something like that. You see, some of the dinosaurs did grow large, like the sauropods, but even they hatched from eggs and were once young adults, and so would not have been that large. Actually, there was plenty of room on board Noah's Ark for two of every kind of the dinosaur kind. And I'm sure that God chose those young adults that were ready for the new world to populate in the new world. What happened to those land animals that didn't go on board the Ark? They were drowned. Many of them turned into fossils. The dinosaur fossils we find, most of them probably come from the time of the flood, over 4,300 years ago, and therefore they're only thousands of years old, not millions of years old. Those that came off the Ark started to spread out over the earth, and then, because of changing conditions, many animals have become extinct, including the dinosaurs. Really, for animals to become extinct is nothing new. We see it happening every year. Now, is there any evidence that's consistent with that explanation of dinosaurs? Actually, there is lots of evidence consistent with that. We have dragon legends all over the earth, just as we have flood legends. Flood legends attest to the fact there was a real flood. Dragon legends attest to the fact there were real animals called dragons, and the descriptions of those creatures in many instances fit the dinosaurs. And then there are cave paintings all over the earth done by people hundreds of years ago who drew animals that they were familiar with, and some of those paintings look just like the dinosaurs. And you know, there's even indication in the Bible of a dinosaur that lived beside a man after the flood. Go and read the book of Job, Job chapter 40, verse 15. Behemoth, the largest land animal God made. The description fits something like a sauropod dinosaur living with Job after the flood. We've also found in our present world dinosaur bones with what appear to be red blood cells and soft tissue still in them, indicating they can't be millions of years old. You know, when people ask me what happened to the dinosaurs, my usual answer is, well, they died. But of course, they didn't die out millions of years ago. Many died at the time of the flood, and those that were alive on Noah's Ark, their descendants died out sometime after the flood. It's the Bible's history that explains dinosaurs.
Guys, I hope that some of you enjoyed this and maybe you learned something, maybe you didn't. But I'm going to close this out in prayer, and I hope each of you have a blessed week. Dear Father, I thank you for this evening. Lord, I thank you for the technology that you've blessed us with to be able to meet even though we're in separate places. Father, I pray that you'd please be with each of the students tonight and each of the teachers that are usually here. And Father, I pray that you would bless them this week, protect them, and continue to just be with them during this crazy, interesting time. Father, I pray that if it be your will, that you would bring an end to this coronavirus soon and continue to protect those who are serving and the nurses and doctors who are helping those who are sick. Father, I pray that you continue to be with our president, our leadership, our governor, our church leadership. Lord, continue to give each of them wisdom. And Lord, I pray that you would just bless all of us with a good week this week. Lord, we thank you for the praise of Stacy and Chad's baby Evie. Lord, we pray that she would continue to grow healthy and strong, as well as Stacy's recovery would go quickly. Lord, we love you and we praise you. We thank you for this evening. In your name we pray. Amen.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.